everybody, welcome back to Ice Cave Radio. We took a week off. Sorry about that. It happens once in a while. That's just how it goes. But we're back again. We've got a lot to talk about. And we've got a really interesting conversation to have about deck building. That's going to be kind of our main topic of the day. But before we dive into everything, how's it going, Charmer? How is your local events? You've been playing some Twin Suns recently, actually.
I have been, yes. My local events have been... Well, first, let me just say, I missed the last local event, like prior to this week, because I was traveling during the mishap with all of the airlines and so forth. I was in New Jersey to cast a Flesh and Blood event, and then I spent like 30 hours in the New Jersey airport, which was not fun. So I was very happy to have a nice casual, that's right, Keep Twin Suns casual event this weekend. And on Sunday, played some Twin Suns, took my son as well. It was great timing because we are practicing. You know, you're asking me how I'm doing. Well, I'm very excited because tomorrow I'm headed down to Gen Con and I'm going to be talking to some folks at Fantasy Flight Games while I'm there. So you have some stuff to look forward to on that front. But Twin Suns has been fantastic. I had a lot of fun. So much fun, in fact, that I have settled on a deck and I have went overboard with said deck because for the audio listeners, you can't see this, but I'm holding up a Showcase Ray and a Showcase Hera.
Wow.
The Hera I naturally opened. It was one of the two that I opened for set one. The Ray I bought from my local game store after I had played my Twin Suns deck because I had so much fun playing it. It turns out that if you pick a theme and you just kind of go with the theme instead of focusing on winning, Twin Suns becomes that much more enjoyable, at least to me. So I do have some other ones that I'm looking forward to building, but my theme for this one was play a bunch of uniques and play as many cards outside of your aspects without paying the tax. So I settled on Ray because you can run Kylo, and then Hera because you get to run all the Spectre units. And so it was kind of fun because I was just playing kind of whatever I wanted in terms of aspects and colors and, you know, heroism and villainy and you name it. And cool. I really enjoy it. So
I like that.
I'm great.
Well, you bring up a good point too. Just a little quick note on Twin Suns. Like, I feel like that I learned this from playing MTG Commander too, where it's like, rather than try to win, just build a deck that does something cool or has a cool theme, you know, that makes people have fun at the table, you know, and you're going to get a lot more enjoyment out of it. Hence the Keep Twin Suns casual once again. But that's great. I had another week of experimentation with Boba Fett. This one didn't go as well. I lost two. Well, I mean, I say it didn't go as well. And I went 1-2, but the two losses were like very close 1-2 losses. So I think it kind of confirms what I was thinking, where this is like a very, you know, aggro Boba at least is a very B+, A- kind of deck, where it's like, if it was very polished, if it was piloted really well, it could do fine. But I think my experimenting with Boba Fett is at an end. I only played it because I pulled the showcase. It's time to dive into some of the decks that I was really excited about playing with set 2. So this next time around, I'm not sure if I'm going to bring Cad Bane or Jabba or something like that, Bosk. But there's a lot of stuff I'm looking forward to trying out in a more competitive environment. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, is just I've been building a lot of decks. I haven't gotten as much time as I want to test them and play them. And so hopefully going forward now, we're going to kick the testing and more serious playing for set 2 into high gear. We messed around a little bit. Now it's time to kind of get serious, I think, with this set.
I am personally very ready to get serious because I've basically only played either Limited or Twin Suns. I've built a bunch of decks and I have done a little bit of testing, but I am ready to put a ton of games on my massive list of decks. I don't even know how I'm going to get through playing and testing all of these. Like, legitimately, I've got like around 20 decks that are like put together on SWODB, and I need to put reps on them before I decide what I want to invest in.
We'll work on that. But before we get any farther, we gotta talk about a cave pull. So this was one that was from a couple weeks ago. Again, we skipped a week, so we're revisiting that one that we talked about. And the question was, what is the thing you're most excited about with competitive play? And so the answers were, let's see, I can do this. There we go. What are you most excited about with organized play? And I can't remember what all the questions were again because it was 2 weeks ago. But what are you most excited about with competitive play, Charmer? What aspect of it?
For me personally, it's meeting people and, cross our fingers, maybe an opportunity to do some casting.
Yeah.
I enjoy casting, whether it's esports, whether it's cards. Despite my travel woes, I had a ton of fun casting Flesh and Blood when I was in New Jersey, and it makes me pumped to potentially do it for this game. But even if I'm not casting, one of the big reasons that I like going to events, especially the larger events that you're traveling, is you get to just meet people from the community, and it might be other content creators that you only get to kind of see once or twice a year. It might be friends that you've made from the Discord. We have a great Discord community, and I just really relish those moments. So I believe when we did this poll, that was my selection, was the meet new people or just kind of in general see the people you don't get to see very often.
All right. I know my choice was just the thrill of competitive play. Like, I just enjoy competing, just doing as best as I can and see what happens, like I don't necessarily get like upset about losing anymore. I used to at one point in my life really not enjoy losing, but since then I've my years in competitive gaming, I've sort of gotten to enjoy both winning and losing. So it's just, if I know I played, to the best of my abilities, that's what makes me happiest. So that's what I'm looking forward to too. Also the casting side, I'm sure there's going to be opportunities for that. But it's fun to play every once in a while. So let's take a look at what you, the viewers at home, had to say. The biggest, 52.38% actually, was the thrill of competition regardless of the result. That's what I picked. That's kind of what I talked about with it. Just really kind of pushing yourself as far as you can and seeing what happens. And that warms my heart that most people pick that, because that's the type of person I want to play against in these events, is other people that just want to be as good as they can and aren't going to attach their egos to the result,
Yeah. Also looking at this, I remember now, I was dead set on picking meeting new friends, but now that I've seen, I remember I am one of the 4 that picked shiny new promo cards because I have a crow brain. If I see like an ooh shiny, I'm like, oh, I have to have it. Case in point, I just bought a showcase so I can double showcase at Gen Con. So I did end up, I'm one of those 4 votes, but I was very close to picking meeting new friends.
Yeah, not as many votes at this one as some of our other polls, but the other options were I'm going to keep it casual, which is fine too. It's fun to go and play at those events, get those promo cards, and just kind of play for fun. A lot of people do that too. Promo cards obviously are a draw for many card games, so no big surprise there. But one single person picked being a judge, which was timely because we did have that announcement about the judge program come out. So that's exciting. I think I'm gonna go through the program or whatever training you can do with that. Try to pass whatever tests I need to pass to be a judge, just to kind of have that level of knowledge. I want to have that authority, whether I judge things or not. I think it's just good if you want to be that deep in the game. So I'm looking forward to that. I've never been a rules lawyery type of person, but I am a big time trivia person. So I kind of view it from that perspective, where it's like, did you know? So that'll be fun. But nobody picked meeting new friends. Nobody picked becoming a champion. So I like the humility, right? Where everyone's like, I'll just do the best I can and see what the result is. But meeting new friends, I've met a lot of people that I have hung out with regularly over the years that I met at card gaming events, different groups of friends over time. So I'm surprised that didn't get picked. But all I got to say there is, hey, be open to it. Be open to getting to know the person across the table from you. It might be fun.
I wonder if it's just because many of the people, when they go to these events, they feel like the competition has to be the center point, and so they're not really thinking about meeting new friends. But as I've gotten older, that's been more of the focus for me. Now, part of that is because, you said, hey, I can enjoy winning or losing. I wish I was wired that way. I don't get like upset if I lose, but I hate losing more than I like winning, and I'm very aware of that. Mm-hmm. So as a coping mechanism, I just always try to make friends instead, because honestly, like, that's just something that you can always take with you as well. And those experiences are better. It's just better for everybody involved. It is still a game at the end of the day. And I I've really leaned into that, because when I was younger, I was definitely like, I would show up. I was turbo focused on the competition part of the game anyway, right? So all of my conversation would be about the game and actions and game state, and then like that would be it. And now I'm like the exact opposite. I'm usually cracking jokes about my own misplays and being a silly boy most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, same. It's like if your opponent, I love it when you're both trying really hard, but your opponent and you are like laughing about things too. That's when I have kind of the most fun. And I had to like rewire myself. I'll say, I guess, because like I used to be like a big time rager in like my college years and stuff like that. Like I wouldn't, and I guess my rage was different than your typical, nerd rage with competitive gaming. Like I wouldn't rage at my opponents or at other people. I would like self rage, right? I would be upset with myself about my play rather than, being like, oh, that person did this, that makes me mad. I would only get mad at myself. So in fact, to the point where when I was playing like one of the old like Call of Duty games on Xbox Live back in like the Xbox 360 era, I had an old controller next to me on the couch in my dorm room that when I was mad, I would pick that up and throw it against the concrete wall in my dorm room so that I wouldn't break like my good controller. I actually had like a designated rage controller, which was kind of smart, but at the same time, like you shouldn't need to have that at all, So over the years, I think when like, especially when I started playing StarCraft 2 and casting StarCraft 2 and like getting to know actual pro players, that was like a big time ego check where it's like, why in the world am I getting mad about any of my own games when like, first of all, like I'm never going to be as good as all these pros that I hang out with now. And like two, my livelihood doesn't require me to win games. I'm playing for like learning purposes only, basically, in my own person. And so that reality check was like, okay, I don't really need to be upset about this anymore. So that kind of changed things. But man, before that, like I said, a lot of self rage. We'll put it that way. But so if you're out there and you have that affliction, we'll say there's getting some perspective on it. I think helps a lot. So best of luck with that out there. And I think again, like joking with your opponent, having fun. Don't be afraid to like poke fun at yourself sometimes. If you mess up, it's just it's a game at the end of the day. If you're not having fun with it, probably you shouldn't be doing it. So. Yeah, little side note there. But it seems like most people are excited about competition. We have to talk, though, Charmer, speaking about competition, about the recent news about the planetary qualifiers and the hot-blooded conversation that has resulted in across the community. Because I think nobody is alone in thinking that we wish there were more. I think you mentioned when we were talking about it earlier that you're in Michigan and there really aren't anywhere nearby for you. Is that right?
And not that I can find. I have been told that there are some events in areas kind of near me. Like the closest one that I believe is, in my region is Chicago. Now I say that I believe because I had a friend of mine who texted me, said, hey, if you want to coordinate for the planetary qualifiers, these are the ones I'm planning on attending. And I was like, okay, great. I'll look them up later and I'll get back to you. And then I went to look them up and the event viewer, I don't know if it wasn't working. See, like this is the problem, right? Because my friend texted me, hey, there's a qualifier in Chicago. And then when I set a location of like the Chicago airport and I say, show me all of the planetary qualifiers within 200 miles, nothing comes up for me. So I don't know if it's a site problem or if it's a me problem. Could just be user error.
Well, I'm having the same issue in LA. Like it's not showing anything in 200 miles of me either. And I know for a fact there's one in Pasadena, although that's all sold out instantly, which is a whole other thing. But yeah, so I don't know if the event viewer is working very well on the site right now.
Right. And so that leads me to part two, which is, when I was very first looking near me, I wasn't finding any in Michigan. And that would feel kind of sad or be a bit of an oversight just because I know it's really popular here. The player attendance, even just for weekly events, is traditionally better than our weekly Flesh and Blood events, or if it's not better than, it's at least equal to. And Flesh and Blood is pretty well represented in Michigan, like as a good comparison. We have a fair number of folks who show up and they travel all around the state for the different events. And so, I want to play in as many as I can, but right now I'm struggling to find them, and I have that FOMO. I'll be honest. Like I'm
Yeah.
feeling a little shaky.
We only had one for the entire Los Angeles area, which is pretty unfortunate considering the amount of players we have here. And the one that did exist or does exist may have had some shenanigans around it where some people got an opportunity to sign up earlier. It seems like that might be the case, although I don't want to say too much about that because we'll say that investigation is still ongoing. But either way, I know people in the LA are very much not happy with it. And it's too bad because I think it's something a lot of people are looking forward to, us included. And so, we know that on the stream, they did say that it was going to be more limited the first time out. This is season 0, as they're calling it. It's very much a testing kind of thing. And that they were going to increase things 3 to 4x next time, which is the quote from the stream. So
Yep.
I hope that's the case. I know for sure in the LA area, at least we could use probably 3 or 4 and they would all sell out no problem. I mean, again, the locals around here are very well populated too, especially in comparison to a lot of the other card games. So there's a lot of excitement for it. But I think this also leads to another topic because there isn't really too much more to say about the planetary qualifier thing. Excited about it. Wish there were more. That's about it. We'll see what happens in the future. But it does bring up the conversation around third-party tournaments and the importance of those, I think, which is something that we've both talked about in the past, and especially me coming from esports and seeing a lot of communities, like good, strong, competitive communities, be built in the grassroots way, and then the company that makes the game comes in and essentially represses that and says, no, our stuff is the only stuff. I really don't want to see that happen in this game because we do, at least in the LA and the SoCal area, have a very thriving third-party tournament scene. There's like 1Ks, 3Ks going on around the area. It seems like every week, and they're very well populated, So I hope that going forward, Fantasy Flight has a plan to cooperate and coexist with these events. And I think it's fine to say the official stuff for Fantasy Flight very obviously is the pinnacle, right? That is the Galactic Champion is the best StarCraft Unlimited player. The qualifiers, like that path is the pinnacle of Star Wars Unlimited. What did I say? Why are you laughing, Charmer?
I'm laughing, and don't get me wrong,
Okay.
completely understandable.
Sure.
You were waxing poetic about your esports background, and so you had a bit of a Freudian slip.
Did I?
You said the StarCraft Unlimited Galactic Champion. And I was like,
Hey,
man, that's right
we
up there
all-
with how.
we all miss
Listen, I
StarCraft. What can I
say Final Fantasy games all the time when I mean Fantasy Flight games.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah.
the Star Wars Unlimited, not StarCraft Unlimited. I've been thinking about RTSs a lot, man. I mean, there's a lot of new RTSs being made right now. Everyone wants to be the spiritual successor to StarCraft. There's like at least 4 big ones at the moment. So, and I've been thinking about those a lot lately. That's a whole different podcast, right? But like, where was I? Yeah. So I want Fantasy Flight. You almost got me to say Final Fantasy. I want Fantasy Flight games to coexist with the third-party tournament organizers and say our stuff is the pinnacle of Star Wars Unlimited competition, but we are thrilled that there is such investment into our competitive scene from other sources. I don't want to see that get repressed like I've seen it get repressed in so many other games. Please, I'm begging you, work with your community. Accept that people want to throw their own tournaments, and if you're not going to directly support it, at least tolerate it and allow it to exist. I think in my opinion, the situations where these game companies should step in is if there's a situation where the IP itself is being represented in a way that they're not happy with, whether it's associated, like on the extreme sense, if it's like at a gun sales show or something like that,
Yeah.
or like if hey, come to our Star Wars tournament and do drugs, like that's the kind of thing where it's like they'd have to step in and be like, okay, we'd rather not have you run a tournament, or it's something where this tournament is setting itself up to be and saying we are the pinnacle of Star Wars unlimited competition. That's the kind of thing where it's like, sure, I think it's within their rights to step in and say, all right, let's tone it down a little bit, but that said, I think you really should embrace the what your scene is willing to do for your game, because at the end of the day, like that's also promotion for your game that you're not having to pay for or organize. So embrace that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just getting ready to say, even if you're not going to more directly support it. I mean, obviously they are doing the, the weekly play stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
In case we need the emergency pack. I'm trying to keep these on hand now.
That's good.
But also there are great local events that stores are running that you could, if you're not directly supporting them, use it to highlight what the community is doing while also kind of advertising your own game. And you were mentioning the intellectual property side. If you also want to like uplift the IP, you and I, before we started recording this, we're talking about how I have my local store, and I've talked about it here, where they did the lightsaber tournament. I won a cool custom lightsaber. Next weekend, they are doing a tournament that they're calling This Is the Way. And it's a Black Series Mandalorian helmet that is going to go to first place. And I think that something like that is really cool, right? It's a licensed official Star Wars thing as the quote unquote trophy. And it would be low cost, almost no effort other than maybe the write up. And even then you could almost say like, hey, to the store if you want to do a write up or whatever. But if they were to like say, hey, send us some photos, or even if it's just like a photo of the winner with the helmet, and they could post it on the website, or do a cool article, like a roundup of like, get in touch with your local store because there's all these cool events that are happening. Here are some examples, and then they could list like 2 or 3 across the country or even globally. I think stuff like that is cool, right? I think about what other card games are doing. I think Flesh and Blood does a great job of these kind of breakdowns of their big events, but also when they do like a ProQuest season or skirmish season is coming up, and they'll say like, hey, here's a recap of skirmish season week 3, and they'll have photos from some of the local game stores and some kind of cool anecdotes. It costs nothing to make your community feel like they're part of something bigger.
I mean, it's such a great asset too, as far as like content for your site too, to do those little tournament breakdowns and things, and include maybe some deck lists that are winning around around the world, right? If you want to really promote your game and get people to visit your site versus other sites, having that kind of content, deck lists and things like that, that's a big one, right? I'd like to take it even farther though than what you're saying. I would love to see what I would call like a trusted broadcast partner program put into place, right? Where you have these third-party entities that run tournaments, and I'm always thinking about it from the broadcast perspective because that's my background. Run good broadcasts of these tournaments, and once they've run 2 or 3, and Fantasy Flight has had a chance to kind of like vet the quality of this broadcast, vet the people that are on them, feel safe about it, that they maybe can be in sort of this program, right, where they would gain a little bit of promotion from maybe the FFG Twitter or something would retweet them or something like that. Have a little bit of light promotion from the Fantasy Flight side directly, again, after vetting for these organizations. I think that would be great, because I think that would, on the one hand, again, provide lots of, essentially free content and advertising for Fantasy Flight, for their game, and also really spur a growth in quality for third-party tournaments and broadcasts, right? And really make things want to, be good, look good, to be part of that program, have an incentive around that. So the interest is there, I mean, we've seen it. There's been so many big tournaments happening, and semi-big tournaments happening all over the nation right now. So leveraging what's already happening to continue growing the game, to accelerate the growth of your game at the competitive front, I think would be great for them to do. So I hope they take note. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for them, for Fantasy Flight is what I'm saying, and then for the community as well, to make a lot of cool stuff and provide a lot of avenues for competition. Someone was talking to me recently about I started a channel in our Discord for parents, because a lot of us out there have kids now. Some of those people like you have kids that are of card playing age, and someone in that channel brought up hey, wouldn't it be cool if they did something similar to what exists in Pokemon right now, where the parent can sign up for an account in the card gaming realm, and then they can essentially put their kids as sort of like sub accounts underneath them, and then those kids can compete in youth oriented events, earn things, win prizes, gain points. And I say, like, do that. Like, this is a game where I've seen, people that are 10, 11 years old, the age I was when I started playing card games, competing at my locals, And wouldn't it be great if at some of these bigger events we had, youth-specific competitions for, for kids like that to, grow their love of card games, but in an environment where, they aren't going to run into that bitter old rules lawyer that's going to make them have no fun, right? Because we know those people are out there. And I'd like to think there aren't a lot of those people in our community, but we know there's probably a few. So I think there's going to be enough interest, too, that if there's a youth division for this stuff, that there'd be a lot of people that would participate. And I think that's great. I think one of the biggest problems in card games that I see right now is that there's not enough young people at locals, across all card games, I'm saying at the moment. And this is a card game that is different. I've seen, younger people coming and playing. And again, like I said, it just warms my heart to see people that were the age I was when I started playing card games again, So that's another thing that I think, Fantasy Flight should really lean into. But anyway, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I've talked a long time. Do you have any responses to that?
Not any responses. I was just nodding my head a bunch. If you were listening and not watching the video, you couldn't see it. But I agree wholeheartedly. I think that, outside of, Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, there's not enough onboarding kind of in the TCG space. I think this is another great game for doing so. It's engaging. It's a fun intellectual property. Mm-hmm. It's very accessible. And I have seen, again, it's not like the same as, say, like a Pokemon night, but I have the same experience that you do, where it's not just, Stark is my son, right? It's not just Stark at the thing. There's at least 2 other parents that bring their son and daughter as well. It's fun. Like, to me, the most fun I've had so far at any Star Wars event is actually, there was one event where Stark was playing against another kid at roughly his age, and I had finished my game early. I was on Sabine, and I 2-0'd very fast. It was very uneven games. So I had a chance to just like watch him play, and hearing Generation Alpha like trash talk during a card game was some of the most fun I've had, just period. Yeah. And I want more of it, right? Like that's what I want.
There was my last local. I was like playing my match, and sitting next to me was one of the kids. I think he was like 10 or 11 years old or something. But at one point, he like holds up a card and he's like, "You won't believe what I'm gonna do next." And I'm like, yeah, that's the kind of hype I want about like making plays in this game. That's great, So someone else just sent me a picture from, or I think it was posted in that channel again on our Discord, where they had like a night that they organized for for their kids and some of their friends to come and all play together and stuff. So that's great. Again, like just from a purely like thinking about the future of TCG's perspective, and I have a daughter, and she's 1 year old, and obviously she loves to look at the cards, she loves to hold them and occasionally try to eat them, but I hope someday she will want to play games with them as well. So I think the more we can do to make sure the future is bright for the next generation of card gamers, the better. So
yeah, I mean, even this past week, another great anecdote. Stark, when we did Twin Suns at my local game store, we had 11 people show up, right? So we did a pot of 4, and a pot of 3, and we counted off numbers, did it randomly. Stark came running over from his pod, and he goes, "Dad, I got Luke up to 11." And I have no idea, what that means, no context. He had put every upgrade he could possibly do on his Luke leader. He was playing Luke Sabine, and he had him up to like an 11-13 or something like that. So he was just really excited.
It's a big Luke.
It's a big Luke.
But that's great. Like, I mean, that's what I remember from like when I first started playing Magic the Gathering in 1994, where I saw I remember seeing like a craw worm for the first time, and I'm like, it has 6 power. Whoa, this is going in my deck for sure. and or the stuff like that. I love it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see that excitement again from other players. But I digress. This all goes back to our point where it's exciting to see the official stuff getting rolling. That's the pinnacle of SWU competition. But let's make sure that everything is coexisting well with the grassroots stuff too. Because that's how your game is really gonna be booming, right? As opposed to just another lockdown mediocre competitive game, right? Yeah. So anyway, moving on to our main topic of the day. The main topic we want to talk about comes from the Discord. Sometimes we get questions for the mailbag that seem like they would be better answered as just kind of a main topic for the show, because there's a lot to talk about with that. And this topic definitely fits into that. And do you have the actual text in front of you? I could summarize it, but do you want to go?
I don't have the full text in front of me.
I can do it. So basically the idea is, when a new set comes out, what is your approach to deck building? Which is a very broad, very open-ended question. And so we thought we'd talk about that. So why don't you lead us off, Charmer, on the most sort of broad strokes level? When a new set comes out, or we'll just use our current use case here. When set 2 came out, what was your approach to building a new deck with set 2?
Oh, I might be the wrong person to ask, because I am usually like a font of ideas when a new set is coming out. Specifically because there are, I think, 2 places that you start at the core of anything, right? Starting spot 1 is, what is in the new set that I think is either appealing to me as a player, or that I think is really powerful that I want to build around. Like, that's starting spot 1. Starting spot 2, in a scenario where it's, any set after set 1, is what is in the new set that has me excited to expand upon things that I either already played in set 1 or thought about, but it wasn't, quite powerful enough yet in set 1, and maybe the new stuff puts it over the hump, right?
Yeah.
Those are, I think, the 2 usual starting points. And then from there, usually what I do, because the ideas are flowing and I don't want to forget, is I start taking notes about the types of things that I want to explore, right? And it might be something simple. It might just be like the leader and the aspect colors, right? I might do something that's like Jabba red, right? Like, I'll just write down Jabba red. And I know later when I look at that, that really means I want to try, the new Jabba leader with aggression and check out the bounty hunter stuff, right? What are the ways that I can exploit bounty hunters if I pair him with red? Or I might write something else down. For example, the most recent deck that I was kind of tinkering around with was, I wrote down Fennec Disruption. And the idea was, if I play a lot of the natural hand disruption stuff that already exists in Cunning and Heroism, but what if I take that a step further and I also pair it with her Ambush, and I start creating 2-for-1s? Like, the initial thought I had was, Bodhi Rook is a hell of a card, but he's even better when he also ambushes it for a value trade, right?
Yeah.
That seemed like a really powerful play. So I started saying to myself, like, okay, I'm going to write this note, and then I'm going to try it out later, and then I'm going to expand upon it. Another note that I had was, Sith Inquisitor actually viable? Because obviously he got a ton of new support, and I knew what that meant. But I think that for me, the core is there something new that appeals to me or that I think is powerful? Or is there something that already existed that either got better or I really enjoyed in set 1 anyway, and I just want to tweak it, right? Like, those to me, I think, are the best core starting spots. What about you?
I think I'm in a very similar boat, where, picking a single card that strikes you, or a theme that strikes you, and then trying to build around that. Obviously this game does a lot for you in that category, where the leaders are essentially themes in and of themselves. So you can pick a leader because you like what they do. You can pick a leader because you like that character, and then be like, okay, how can I make this as effective as possible? Going back, like, I played a lot of Sabine Cunning. So, like, what can I do to improve that deck list? What can I remove? What can I put in without losing kind of the, what worked before? But I also kind of read myself. I had a whole document. It's mostly been eliminated as I've like built those lists and tested it out. But I did also have like a list of like trying different things. A couple things are still on the list, like Cad Bane capture is still something I really want to expand on, because that's kind of what I played to do really well at a couple of pre-releases. So I'm like, can I expand this into a good premiere deck list? And that's one of the things I'm going to be working on. Another one was the Boba Fett showcase, right? I pulled the showcase, so I'm like, okay, well, how this is interesting, because I wasn't planning on building Boba Fett. So now that I am pivoting to do that, how do I want to run Boba Fett? And so then my process was, well, I like to play aggressively. Can Boba Fett work with aggression? And then, looking at being like, okay, how do I make Boba Fett as effective as possible with aggression? Going to like, all right, well, Red 3 just basically doubles his effect, because then you've got the Raid 1 and you've got the Boba thing. Suddenly your stuff is hitting for 2 harder. That's going to give you so many good value trades and all that. And so that was kind of the jumping off point to be like, okay, now how can I capitalize on this? And one thing goes to another. But, I think we have fairly similar approaches, which is, what most people probably would. I will say I think I'm good at coming up with ideas for decks, but my version 1 lists are never really very good lists. I need a lot of hands-on iteration to really come to a good list. There are deck builders out there that can just like see a list and be like, nope, this doesn't work, but this does. And they build really good lists off the bat. I'm not one of those people. I think I'm good on the concept side, but I really need like hands-on gameplay experience to help me like refine things. Where are you on that front? Do you feel like you're a good deck builder, or do you need a lot of refinement too?
I think, man, this is going to sound like really conceited, but I think I'm usually really good at both.
Okay.
I think that a lot of times my first pass is at least strong enough to be playable. It might not be the best version of the deck. But I have enough experience
bar, right?
with
I mean, that's the minimum
but I just
you
mean,
have to hit.
well, minimum you have to hit, but I guess I should say like playable in that I feel like I could probably still go do well at an event even, right? Not just like I can show up and play. Like I usually feel like the first pass at my decks are relatively strong because I've played enough card games for a long time. And especially with this game, I've played a lot of very similar card games that I kind of know a good starting spot. And then my decks definitely get better with reps. I think that that's just a natural thing, right? You're going to figure out what works. You're also going to get more information. When the set first comes out, you have no idea what a meta distribution is going to look like. So you're kind of planning for a bit of everything. So things like your sideboard are definitely not nearly as refined day one as they will be, a couple of months into a set. Now, that being said, this might be a tip. One of the reasons I think that I tend to do well with my first pass is that I am very rarely what I would describe as being a greedy deck builder on my first pass, even if I'm playing what should be a greedy deck, right? I could be playing a control list, an emperor list, an endless legions list, and I can guarantee I will have more 2-drops than anything else in the deck, just by nature of the way that I start.
Sure.
I like a standard traditional linear curve as my starting point for deck building. And if you're not familiar, that means that you should have more things that you can play on turn 1 than anything else, and then a little bit less turn 2, a little bit less turn 3, et cetera, as a starting point. It might change as you refine, might change as you get to know the meta, but the reason for this is consistency. Even if your deck is not as strong as others, if you make up for it by just being more consistent, you will do well.
I think that's a really good point.
I do think that that's a good just like tip in general for deck building, whether it's a new set or starting with any new game. Just understanding that if you have consistently the ability to do anything at all, right? It might even be an understated unit, but if you can do something when your opponent can't do anything, you start to gain incremental advantages, and that is relevant.
I think it's a good point, because I feel like I kind of glossed over that, because I think that should be just a given when you're building any sort of deck to test, is that you can't, and this is a good lesson, is that you can't lose sight of the fundamentals when you're building a new deck. No matter what theme or idea you're trying to try, your deck still needs to function on the most basic level. And to do that, you still need that same curve. You still need to be able to actually like play your deck in a consistent way, right? And try things out. You can't just be like, all right, I'm gonna play Cad Bane Capture. I'm gonna put every single capture card in the game in it, 3 of every. You can't do that. You have to still have a deck that's going to at least function at a minimum, level of consistency. So, yeah, I think that should just be like basics, right? Is that when you're building something, no matter what you want to put in it, don't forego the fundamentals, because if you do, you're just not going to get an accurate testing experience, right? You're going to be like, oh, well, the deck sucks, but it's like, well, in reality, you just didn't build a playable deck. It doesn't matter what your theme was. You could build a Vader Blue, but if you put like all Star Destroyers in it, it's not going to work out, right? So, yeah, you can't lose sight of the fundamentals of deck building while you're testing. I think that's a really good point, and probably a good starting point for any sort of deck building. Is that a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just go through and I'll just put every card I want to try into the deck list, and so I'll end up with like 70 cards or 80 cards or something like in the deck list, and then I'll start going through and saying, all right, what do I need to, how does this look? And I'll start to think about each card on an individual level, right? I'll do a very rough list first that's way too big, and then I'll go through and start cutting, and I'll do like 3, 4, 5 passes of cutting cards until we get to that good consistent deck curve that you're talking about, right? And there's tough choices to be made in there, even in a first draft, and a lot of times I think what I do, and if I'm doing deck building on SuDB or something, a lot of those just get moved to the sideboard, because I think your sideboard is something you put together way after you do polishing and lots of testing. Your sideboard, in my opinion, is just kind of maybe cards at first. Unless you're going to a local, then you just put some good generic, sideboard cards in there to put in, like Confiscate or whatever. But moving all of that stuff out the main list into a place where you can still take note of it and remember that you were thinking about using it, but get yourself down to a list that at least functions on a basic level, I think is the next step, right? Do you do that cutting before you build your first list, or do you do it, kind of like I do too, where you just put it all in there and then cut,
Yeah, I definitely do that. So my process is typically the same. I start with around 70 cards and then I start cutting. And a lot of times it is because of things that, I put it in because I think to myself there might be a use case, and then on reflection I might decide like, well, how often am I going to run into that specific use case, right? Is this more of a niche card? Am I including this because I'm just afraid of like one particular deck, and I'm making my deck worse because I'm afraid of one deck that I may or may not see, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I also start big and then cut as well, because part of what I do when I'm jamming everything in is if I have some sort of theme, or I wouldn't even say theme, because a lot of times it's more like a plan. I do themes when I build Twin Suns because I want to do like the silly thing.
Right.
Typically from a deck building for like Premier standpoint, I start with like, what is my game plan for winning? And so I throw in everything that supports that game plan, and then I start whittling it down. But I never want to get tunnel vision on going all in for the plan. So like you made a great example, right? Like you don't want to just throw in every capture card if you want to do capture Cad Bane. Or similarly, you don't want to just make it so your deck is like let's say you're going, I want to play Cad Bane Command because there's a Salacious Crumb and all these cool Underworld cards, and so I'm gonna do Cad Bane, I'm gonna do Command, and I'm gonna put in all the Underworld cards, right? That's a good starting spot, but you don't want to forget that like some cards are just powerful enough to be run no matter what. Like the reality is, if you're running Cad Bane Command, you still run Darth Vader. I mean, just full stop. You still run Darth Vader. Yeah. He's not Underworld. He's not a bounty hunter. He's not any of that, but he's strong enough that you're probably actively hurting your deck if you don't run him. Yeah. Now, you might not run 3 copies. You might instead say, hey, Darth Maul is Underworld, and he's good enough that he's now competing with that slot. So maybe you do, like a 2-2 split or something, but you're going to be running those cheap Underworld cards as well. And, doing something where you play Darth Vader and then you get like a 2-drop Underworld and a Salacious Crumb out of it seems pretty good. Mm-hmm. So yeah, when I'm deck building, mostly just to force myself to not get tunnel vision, I overfill and then I cut down, and I do that kind of based on ratios. Now, the one other spot where I will say I differ is that my sideboard is not typically like, what is it that I, wanted to put in, but almost made the cut. My sideboard is almost always 3 copies of 3 cards that just are potentially either silver bullets or bail me out of things that I absolutely don't want to see. Right. So starting like on a day 1, almost all of my decks have 3 copies of restock in the sideboard. Doesn't matter for what or why or whatever. It's just one of those like, hey, I might not see something coming and I might get milled, or they might be playing heavy discard, and at an opportune time they make me discard a really important win condition, whatever. So worst case scenario, I run 3 copies of restock and maybe I have an out. Now they usually get either cut or taken out at some point, but that's a spot. Similarly, depending on the aspect, usually something that deals with upgrades, and then some other third silver bullet.
Yeah, I mean, like stuff like Waylay. You might want to just throw a few Waylay in your sideboard and all that. The interesting thing with Vader and Cad Bane specifically as well is that he doesn't have Underworld, but he still can activate Cad Bane's ability by bringing in an Underworld unit. So that's something like where you said, like, yeah, put Vader in. Like, I've seen so many Cad Banes without Vader if they're running command. I'm like, yeah, you put Vader in because you still get the Cad Bane benefit if you depending on what you bring out. So remember that Vader works with it. He pals around with the Underworld. They're all villainy to him, But yeah, sideboard wise, I usually do generic kind of things if I'm going to a local. If I'm going to use this list, whatever version of list it is before I'm done cutting completely, then yeah, I'll just shave it down to just some generically good sideboard cards. If it's got red, disabling Fang Fighter, I think upgrade removal is the number one thing. Hard card removal, whether it's Waylay if you're in Cunning, or Rivals Fall or Vanquish if you're in blue, you always want to include some of that kind of stuff in the sideboard, have access to that. So yeah, just kind of just have general answers to things too, I think is a good way to approach it. But the funny thing too is you can go a different way too when you're doing deck building, like with my Agroboba deck, Agroba. I basically I did make it kind of a theme deck, even though it was Premier. I put like Raging Rancor in there, Rampaging Rancor in there. I had to include Modded Core. Modded Core, it's a great card, so that would have made it in there either way. But I put one of the double aggression Rancors in there because it's like, hey, we all know how the series ends, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So you can, don't feel timid about putting that stuff in there for fun if you're just going to a local too. Like, I think part of the testing process is also just kind of having fun with it too, because honestly, like sometimes you put in a card for fun and then you have this realization that it works in this way you didn't expect it would. And suddenly you've got this sort of like, neat little, aspect to your deck, no pun intended, that people won't see coming, right? If you're running something a little bit funky. I think like Spark of Rebellion in villainy decks is something that comes to mind there, where it's like, yeah, it's probably worth paying 4 if you're running Cunning to just jump in your opponent's hand and remove something. So once people figure that out, that was a good one too.
There were definitely times in set 1 that I paid 7 to Overwhelming Barrage with Heroism, and I never felt bad about
it. Yeah, I mean, if you've got the board, and they're never going to see it coming too, so it is certainly worth it for sure. So it's that kind of stuff too. As far as other deck building topics go, when you're approaching a new set, it's really easy to get hung up on all the new cards, and you have to be, when you're cutting, you have to take that into account, especially I think, because you're going to be less likely to cut the newer cards than you are the older cards, because you're going to have this sort of subconscious feeling a lot of times where it's like, oh, that's an old card, I want to try the new card. But like, don't get super hung up on that. Maybe there is a list that fulfills your theme with a new leader that still runs most of the old cards. That's certainly possible, so don't be afraid to try that and just be like, all right, well, I want to make this set 2 leader, but I'm going to use mostly set 1 cards. That's fine. Don't be afraid to cut things for that reason too,
Also, in the very early stages, if you are playing in a non-competitive environment or you're just playtesting and you have room to fail, the other thing that I would say is don't be afraid. Sorry, my brain is going faster than my mouth. To try the wacky thing.
Yes.
It might not work, but there have been times in my, I'll call it my card game career. It makes it sound like I was a pro or something, but there's been times in my life while playing card games where I was like, hey, this thing is totally going to be a meme, but it looks fun, so I'm going to try it. And then I try it and it's not a meme and it works and it's really effective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just misvalue things, and that's the importance of reps. You'll always have time to decide if a deck is just not good or if you need to make changes, but at least in the early stages, don't be afraid to try something wacky.
Yeah, for sure. So just off the top of my head, I don't have a whole lot more to add to that. Do you? I feel like that's pretty much everything when it comes to how I approach building things in a new set,
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add. The only other thing I would add is, if there are more questions you have, ping us in the Discord.
Yeah.
I would be happy to answer them. I know that I have been less active lately. It is a combination of being hammered at work, the travel woes of trying to travel during the technological outages. I live in Michigan. Detroit is my closest airport. It is a huge Delta hub. Delta was the one that was the most affected by the issues. Hence, I was most affected by the issues.
Fun.
But I'm very excited to talk about deck building, right? So like if we didn't answer your question, just ping us or ping me. If Doa doesn't want you to ping him, that's up to him. But ping me. You can ping me anytime. I will happily talk about deck building stuff. I would also say, if you see me at Gen Con, feel free to say hello. By the time this airs, I'll be there at Gen Con. So if you're listening to this Saturday because for whatever reason you just couldn't wait to listen to the episode and you're there in Indianapolis, you might see me in Stark walking around.
Charmer is right behind you.
Right behind you.
Oh my gosh, that's terrifying. But yeah, that's but in a good way. But yeah, I think that's about it. I'll say again, yeah, we've got if you're not in the Discord, you absolutely should be, because we have channels for each one of the leaders, and there is pretty lively discussion going for pretty much all the relevant leaders right now. And there's always a little bit of chatting, deck list sharing going for some of the less relevant leaders, we'll say. But that's fun to talk about too. So if you're not in the Discord, definitely join that. But I think that's about it. I think we're going to wrap up the show now. Don't forget to go to icecaveradio.com. Click on merch. You can buy all sorts of great shirts. I've got this one I'm wearing right now. You can't really see it. Maybe you can. I'll lean over. There.
Yeah,
But you see, it's got that
mine is
pocket
packed.
We've got the pocket with Ice Cave Radio right on the pocket. Not the logo, just the text. It looks good. You've got the QR code on the sleeve.
QR code. Yeah.
Yeah. So
mine is packed, and then I also. Just as a heads up, not to cut you off, but I'm just very excited about this. I have ordered one of our awesome Keep Twin Sons casual shirts, and to ensure that I can wear it during my Twin Sons pod at Gen Con.
That's what I like to hear. Yes.
I had it shipped to the Airbnb that I'm staying at, so I will have it, and I am so excited.
Perfect. Yes. We must keep Twin Sons casual. I wear that almost every week to my local, just to drive it into people's heads. That's how we have to play the game. But that said, I think go buy some merch. Jump on the Discord, come and chat. Thanks for watching, everybody. We're gonna have more mailbag stuff, and we've got some other plans in the works here too. Without saying too much about it, there might be a little bit more interesting stuff coming in the future here. I think I can kind of guarantee that, but.
Listen, it's very telling that you and I have done stuff in esports because we're doing an announcement for our announcement.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, you're right. But there will be an announcement of something soon that will be announced. So get excited for that. But that's gonna do it for us this week on Ice Cave Radio. Go ahead and say the line, Charmer.
May the force be with you.